Mr. President, you had a very long conversation with Prime Minister Modi yesterday at the Hyderabad House. So how much was the West Asia conflict and the Russia-Ukraine war was discussed between you two, and what is Finland's stance in the current situation in the Middle East that we are seeing? It's been over a week now.
So to start off with, it's an honor and privilege to spend 3 hours in the presence of the Prime Minister of India. So we had a very good and engaging, broad-ranging conversation about conflicts around the world, about relations to China, relations to the US, relations to Russia, and relations to Europe, and of course bilateral as well. And the two key conflicts that we focused on was Ukraine and, of course, Iran. On the latter, which you call West Asia, we have seen an escalation that we haven't seen in recent times. Conflicts after the Cold War used to be quite local. Now they have become regional, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, or now Iran, and then missiles flying to 12 to 13 countries. So, I gave my assessment of the situation and called for the importance of de-escalation. I briefed the Prime Minister about my conversations with the President of the United Arab Emirates and the Emir of Qatar. I yesterday spoke with the King of Jordan. So the situation is on the knife edge. And of course, we want to stay out of the conflict, but the truth is that there's always an impact, whether it's oil prices, whether it's trade, whether it's maritime. So we were not able to solve it or de-escalate, but hopefully we can move into that direction. But right
capacity as Finnish president, how has been the visit so far? Yesterday you had meetings. How did the visit go so far?
Oh, it's been wonderful. Doing a state visit is always a big endeavor, I think, for the hosting country, and I felt very warmly welcomed. I mean, spending 3 hours with Prime Minister Modi, then having the opportunity to speak at Raisina, and having a number of other meetings with your political leaders has been very giving. And for me, it's also a big moment. The last time I was in India was 2013, and just to see the development with your own eyes in terms of infrastructure, in terms of roads, in terms of buildings. It's always nice to be back in India.
Sir, as we are discussing your visit here, so yesterday some important MOUs were also signed, like the MOU on mobility and migration, MOU on sustainability and other things. So how do you see the productivity of this visit and the MOU signed?
Yeah, really good. I mean, of course, you have to put things into perspective. You have almost 1.5 billion people. Finland has 5.6 million people. The Indians who live in Finland, a little bit over 20,000, pretty much around the capital region, and most of them are engineers or tech specialists. I think these MOUs will help us to have better exchanges when it comes to labor mobility. But I also have a business delegation here of 20 big Finnish companies, and I'm sure that they'll be doing some good business with India. And I think it's going to be very much a two-way street.
As we are in Mumbai, which is the victim of terrorism, and we are in Taj Hotel, which is a monument of 26/11, which has seen the worst of one of its kind attacks. So you have been at the memorial also of the deceased in this. So how do you see terrorism as a menace for India, Finland, and the globe?
Well, I think terrorism is always a menace. Depends on which part of the world you are in. And of course, actually ever since 9/11 in the US, the West started to focus on terrorism in a different kind of a way. Of course, there was internal terrorism in Europe. We saw that in Spain. We saw it actually in Northern Ireland and many places. But it's a menace everywhere. And when you allow extremists to roam around, terrorism usually breeds. And of course, the attacks on the 26th of November 2008 were horrific, and it was a great honor for me to be able to pay my respects to the victims. Interestingly enough, before I came to India, my son suggested that I should watch Durandar, and I did. And of course, that was one part of the narrative of that movie, and I'm, I guess, happy to fight against terrorism and look forward to the sequel on the 19th of March of the movie.
So you mentioned that the global south, led by India, will shape the next world order.
Yeah.
How do you see India's global influence over the next decade, and how does India view India's role as a key part of it in Europe when it comes to increasingly multipolar world?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the future is Indian, and I don't say this only because I'm Indian. I'm not trying to be overly diplomatic. I think demography, economy, and history speaks in your favor. A world order changes ever so often, and they usually last 2 decades, as they did after World War I, 4 decades during the Cold War, and 3 decades after the Cold War. And I think we're now seeing a transition of the world order. I would prefer it to be multilateral, in other words, leaning on international institutions, rules and norms, not multipolar, which for me is a lot of times about pure interests, deals and transactions. Reality is probably going to be somewhere in between. I am happy that the largest democracy in the world, India, is taking the lead. And my argument to my Western friends is that if we want to save multilateralism, we're going to have to give agency, in other words, power, a seat around the table to the countries that matter today. We don't live in a world of 1945, so the institutions should not reflect that either. It should reflect the world of 2026. That's why I have called, for instance, for a seat, a permanent seat in the UN Security Council for India. I wrote a book about it called The Triangle of Power, where I really think that the Global South is going to decide where we're going to go, and India leads it.